guys, this is Chelsea. Welcome to my channel. Today I'll be reviewing Salem's Lot, the 2024 version. The original version came out in 1994, written by Stephen King. It's his original novel, and the novel is about like 670 pages long, so I will not be reading that. But I really enjoyed this movie a lot. It's a story about an author named Ben Mears. He goes to a place called Jerusalem's Lot, and it takes place in Maine. It's a fictitious town, also known as Salem's Lot, basically. And he goes back to do some research for his new novel, but when he gets there, he finds that the town that he loves has run rampant with vampires. And I really love this story because even though we have like the typical tropes of vampires, like them being really scary and only coming out at night and all of those things, I feel like it did a really good job of having more creativity with the vampires were killed. And I also liked how there were kids and adults in this film. They're working together. There wasn't any sort of hierarchy. It's not like the kids were just following what the adults said. There was very much a cooperation between the two of them, and it wasn't too stagnant in that way. It wasn't really forceful and like the kids listening to the adults. It was very much a teamwork effort, and I just really like how they came together, especially Mark, who's a favorite character. He's the main kid in here, and he's very fearless. He very much takes to his own, and he knows how to protect himself. Also, he's very smart. Like, he's very into magicians and Houdini, so he's very creative in how he's killing the vampires as well. And I just feel like overall it's a pretty good story. It hasn't really gotten that good reviews so far yet. It did come out on HBO Max yesterday, so maybe because it's a home release, it's not like as big yet. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into the reasons why I liked and disliked the movie. I feel like even though it was a scary movie, it was very comedic in the way that they killed the vampires, and I feel like it was very realistic in the way that the characters came together to kill these vampires. They had to rely on a lot of the pop culture that we know of how to kill vampires, and there's a lot of cursing, there's a lot of comedic relief, so it didn't really feel like a scary movie. It felt more like an adventure, if you will. And this all takes place in one town, which I really enjoy. I love stories that are like that because I feel like it's really difficult to showcase your talent, and if you're only writing in one place as opposed to some other movies, like a lot of action movies that I see, they take place in like Singapore and Bali and France, and they just jump around a lot, and that way it kind of reminds me of like short form content, you know, just like speeding through, trying to keep people's attention. But I really feel like when you are having everything happen in one place, especially a place like this where the population is like 2,000 people, you really have to do a lot of creativity and how you bring the characters together. There's not a whole lot to work where there's not like a lot of space in general. Like, you're going down the same streets or seeing the same people, the same places over and over again, and so you're really forced to showcase your talent and bring a lot of drama and a lot of exposition to these places. So I just love that it took place in one location, and the characters are really minimal. But I will say I did not really care for the romance in this film, and I know that I kind of say that a lot, but I feel like in this film it didn't really work because Susan is the love interest of Ben in this film, and they meet, and 2 days later the vampires are, you know, going crazy, and they have to figure out how to get out of the town, and he's like trying to keep her alive, even though they just met each other 2 days ago. And I just feel like as soon as she hit the screen, she was only there to exist for him. As soon as we're introduced to her, she was just like trying to get his attention and trying to be like, oh, like really flirtatious, and she was like all nervous around him, and really she was only there for him. It was very much giving like men writing women in that sort of way. And like also like the character of Susan just was like kind of not really driving with me. I just felt like she was very superficial, and it was like the lines that she was delivering was an archetype of someone else, and it didn't feel very true or real to the character at all. And it just felt like she was kind of there floating with the other characters, and she didn't really have any distinction of her own. So that was one kind of issue that I had with the film. But I did like that even though like we've seen a lot of vampire films, of course, at this point, I feel like in pop culture, Twilight, of course, but I feel like the vampires in this film were very reminiscent of the 80s. And I did watch the trailer of the original film, and the vampires from 74 really resemble the ones that were in the 2004 version. They were very creepy. They kind of looked like little fetuses, and they had really large teeth and like long nails, and very pale, like you could see their veins. So they were very creepy in that way, and I feel like that was a good homage to the original in the way that the vampires were represented. They weren't represented like the typical Twilight vampires, you know, where they're like beautiful and very affluent and have like really good style. So I appreciate that take on how they were represented, and The film also took place, I think, in the 50s or the 80s. I can't really remember, but there was a drive-in in the film as well, which I feel like was a really creative aspect of the film and how the vampires came into play as well. And like the cars and the costumes, I just feel like it did a really good job of bringing you into the scene of this being a small town in Maine. And I feel like the setting is also very important because this is a place where vampires are able to just sort of spread and like go from town to town in a way. It had to happen like a small town, you know, where it's very suburban. So these are places where these things are not supposed to be happening. For them to happen in a small town is also jarring as well. And so I feel like Stephen King does a really good job of representing those places, especially like the other films of his that I've seen adaptations from, like Misery, for example, whatever happened to Dolores Claiborne. Like those are very, when I think about Stephen King novels and films, I think about those in particular. And so having this film be more comedic and more like funny was a very nice take on what I've normally represented from his films. I did also notice in this film that in the very beginning there's like this sort of blue filter, like this blue tint, which gave like film noir in a lot of ways. And then as the film went on, I feel like that sort of went away, but there was a lot of good use of lighting, like when they were backing up the truck, for example, there was a red tail light, and so that did a very good job of illuminating the crawl space or like the bottom layer of the house that they were in. So I liked that element of it as well. Just it sort of brings to the ambiance of it being scary without it being horrific. And I feel like that was just a really good sprinkling throughout the film. And the pacing was really good too. I feel like there wasn't really a point where the action like really ramped up or anything. It was more like I was intrigued throughout, and there was like a good pacing of introducing new characters and introducing the suspense along the way as well. And I feel like that is like really what carried me through. And the film's only 2 hours long, so I feel like if it were any longer I would have perhaps lost interest, but it was like a good amount of time for me to have my attention held. And it's like a very fun film. I didn't really take it too seriously. I wouldn't really call it campy, but it was more so just like a fun ease into the spooky season, and it didn't really feel like it was too jarring or that I couldn't fall asleep at night, you know, like that I didn't get nightmares or anything like that. So I feel like it's a really good, tepid, scary movie. But yeah, that is my review of Salem's Lot 2024. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!